6 to 8 division finals of the 2025 Fremont Debate Academy 5th Annual International Tournament. Here we have the two teams from Centerville and from Horner competing against each other for the winner position of the advanced 6th to 8th grade division. So huge congrats to the two teams over here. They've done a really great job in what's the most advanced division. And the topic today is going to be that the U.S. federal government should increase the minimum wage. So without further ado, I'm going to have Jay Trivedi, our first proposition speaker, turn his camera on, and then you can get started whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Rishabh. Before I start, I'm going to offer a quick off-time roadmap. Hello, Judge Jay Trivedi, represent Fremont Debate Academy Horner on the proper and size debate, moving towards the notion that the United States federal government should increase the minimum wage. Quick roadmap for your convenience. So first, I'm going to start with some definitions. I'm going to say our team's weighing mechanism, and then move on to my team's own contentions. All right. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. So the minimum wage is the lowest hourly pay for workers set by the national government, $7.25 an hour. Increase, raise it gradually to $15 an hour over the course of the next 5 years. Background information: the United States minimum wage has been stuck at $7.25 in 2009, 16 years with zero raises, while costs have soared over 45%. 60% are adults, not teens, as my opponents want to bring up. The way mechanism for this debate is net benefits the most amount of good for the most amount of people. Moving on to our first contention, which is economy. The United States federal government increasing minimum wage helps the economy. Our first link is consumer spending plus small businesses. More income means more financial stability for families and more spending on healthcare, education, and food, meaning better quality of life for people. More sales and demand for businesses leads to business growth and job creation, and which it leads to less poverty. It would put 7.6 million people out of poverty, says the CBO. Every $1 wage increase generates $1.21 into the economy, says Chicago Fed. A $15 minimum wage would add $118 billion to the economy, says by EPI. Business owners themselves support it. Main Street Alliance survey finds 67% of small business owners support a $15 minimum wage. Moving on to team is a second link, which is productivity plus turnover. Better quality of life and mental health helps performance and retention at work. Low-wage workers feel that their jobs are not treating them well and don't work properly. A wage increase would help morale and feel equally treated. 61% of small business owners in states with higher minimum wages say it improve employee morale and productivity. Main Street Alliance, by Main Street Alliance, Walmart raised the minimum wage to
Vishal,
$12. Yeah, yeah.
in your statistics, what would you certify as small business owner?
Small business owner, someone who owns a small business or store, small corporation, whatever, etc. Moving on, yeah, so I'm gonna move on to my team's third link, which talks about less government dependence plus taxes. When wages rise, fewer people need food stamps, Medicaid, or housing subsidies. That lowers federal spending and taxes. A University of California study found that $15 wage would save taxpayers $13.4 to $31 billion a year in benefits. Our fourth link is emergency funds plus negotiation power. With more money, workers' ability to demand fair pay and better workplace conditions without fear of job loss because they have a safety net and don't need loans. And the impact is very simple. Poverty costs lives. It means hunger, untreated illness, and unhealthy food. Desperation fuels crime, protests, violence, and instability. A higher minimum wage lifts millions out of poverty. It puts food on the table and improves quality of life. It boosts the economy by creating jobs and raising wages. This policy has saved lives before, and it will again. So Judge tie everything I said is contention back all to the way magazine that benefits the most amount of good for the most amount of people. Move on to our team's second contention, which is just public health. The United States federal government increasing minimum wage helps public health. Our first link is healthcare. If workers are paid more, they can afford health insurance, co-pays, and regular checkups, etc. The Urban Institute found that raising incomes by $500 a month increases the chance a family visits a doctor regularly by 22%. Better access to a doctor leads to preventive checkups, leads to better treatments, which leads to fewer deaths, less suffering, less child mortality, and longer lifespans. Our second link is food security. Right now, 44 million Americans, including 13 million children, are food insecure. Remember, cheap food is processed, unhealthy, and leftover. It is due to unfair pay. Raising the wage means families can afford more healthy food, fruits, and vegetables and protein leading to better health. One study from the Journal of Epidemiology shows that food security improves by 15% after a $2 wage increase in 2020. Our third link is physical plus mental health. Financial stress is the #1 cause of anxiety and depression in the United States. A $15 wage leads to better housing and financial stability, meaning no constant stress, leading to a reduced risk of depression and a better quality of life. According to the NBER 2021, a $1 an hour increase in the wage reduces suicide rates among low-income workers by 6%. Poverty is a major driver of crime and domestic violence. When people have financial security, crime rates drop. Family stability improve and safety increases. They participate in physical activity, report less physical pain, less use of tobacco and alcohol, and have better living homes, and they have essential items and clothing. And the impact is also very simple. So higher wages means workers can afford food and medical care early. This prevents deadly conditions like heart diseases, improves mental health, and lowers suicide rates. It reduces crime, domestic violence, and substance abuse, leads to happier workers and stronger families and a better quality of life. So, Judge, ties entire connection back to Way Magazine. Net benefits the most amount of good for the most amount of people. I'm gonna end off with the opposition defends the world while 44 million people remain food insecure and 7.6 stay in poverty. The CBO, where a million lives on pennies without change, no healthcare, clothes, or even proper food. And with that, I urge you to vote for the proper and concise debate. Thank you.
First, I'd like to start off with an off-time roadmap. My name is Anika Christian. I'm the first speaker on the opposition side of this debate, going strongly against the notion that the U.S. federal government should increase the minimum wage. First, I'll go over my weighing mechanism and agree with the proposition's definition, and then I would like to refute their points and go over my own. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. Our weighing mechanism for this debate is going to be net benefits, the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. Now I would like to move on to refute my opponent's points. Their first point was about consumer spending and how minimum wages would help make this happen. However, this wouldn't be guaranteed because higher prices make it harder for minimum wage workers to spend more. Companies will raise prices to cover higher wages, which leads to things costing more, and more money in the system also leads to inflation, which means people buy the same or even less than before, which in short is not increased consumer activity. You can't just give out more money and expect no side effects. Instead, businesses will react to it and the value of money will drop. Research on McDonald's restaurants revealed that a 10% hike in minimum wage resulted in a 2.5% increase in the price of a Big Mac, according to Business Insider. Also, they said that small businesses support it. However, a survey by the National Federation of Independent Businesses showed 74% of small businesses believe minimum wage hike would hurt their operation. Their definition for small businesses was that they were non-chain businesses that were at or below the profit range, keeping the owners above poverty. However, the pop statistics was confusing as they didn't show what businesses they called quote unquote small businesses. They also said that it leads to employee morale and productivity. However, even with an increase in minimum wage, they will still be earning minimum wage, and still earning minimum wage means that there's no major morale shift for employees. Plus, employers may even expect more for the increased minimum wage, which would lead to overworking them and lead to burnout, which means even worse work conditions. Next, they said that it would lead to them being less dependent on government services. However, over 70% of adult recipients of food stamps report no employment in the reporting month, according to SNAP research. That means that even with higher wages, many low-income workers still qualify for support. According to a UC Berkeley Labor Center report showed that over 50% of fast food workers are enrolled in at least one public assistance program after a minimum wage increase, which means these workers aren't going to be lifted from poverty by the increased wage. And finally, their last point about public health care and mental health shows that they will be burned out because employers will expect even more from them. And we find that a $1 increase in minimum wages is associated with a 9.2 percentage point decrease in the percentage of employers offering health insurance, according to the Journal of Health Economics, showing how public health care actually won't be helpful for these people because they won't provide healthcare. Now I'll move on to my points. My first assertion is that it's bad for the US workforce. Many businesses, even if they could afford it, would rather cut costs instead of paying workers more. They would outsource to cheaper countries. Outsourcing to other countries will be bad for the American workforce because it will give opportunity to other countries rather than the people in America who need jobs badly. Plus, many businesses will start laying off employees to cut costs, leading to job loss for the United States. They may also replace workers with automation because robots can reduce labor costs by up to 70%, including maintenance costs, according to Business Insider, which means businesses will be more inclined to do so. And this decreases jobs and actually makes it harder for the minimum wage workforce. A McKinsey report estimated that up to 45 million US workers could be displaced by automation by 2030, and 70% of companies outsourced in 2015 because to cut employee costs with the current minimum wage, displacing 2.38 million US jobs, according to the Statistic Brain Research. My impact is that outsourcing, laying off employees, and switching to automation leads to drastic decreases in jobs and less opportunities, which is bad for the economy and decreases quality of life, increasing poverty. My next assertion is that it leads to inflation and is bad for the economy. By increasing the minimum wage, people earn more money from their job, and the sudden increase leads to a lower value of money since there is more available. Plus, business owners often raise prices to match increased wages, which means higher prices makes housing, food, and everyday items more expensive, canceling out the benefits of a wage increase. Businesses, especially small businesses, can get hurt by this huge increase in labor costs, and this extra loss of money can be extremely detrimental to the businesses. My evidence is that according to Fox News, after San Francisco raised its minimum wage to $15, local restaurant closures increased by 14%, especially in lower income neighborhoods. And NBC News reported that after Oakland raised its minimum wage by 36%, necessity prices rose 20%. My impact is that inflation leads to higher prices and it's harder to pay for necessities, which leads to more poverty and lower quality of life. My final contention is that it leads to bad working conditions. And this is because many businesses would increase the workload on workers so that more work is done in less hours. Companies like Walmart and McDonald's have increased worker responsibilities in response to higher labor costs in the past. Thank you, Judge, and I urge you to cast a ballot for the opposition side of this debate.
I would like to start off with an off-time roadmap. Hello, Judge. My name is Harshit Saimanaru. I'll be the second affirmative speaker on the topic that the USFG should increase the minimum wage. First, I'd like to strengthen my own points, refute my opponent's points, and then move on to third and final contention. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. We agree with the weighing mechanism, which is the same as ours, net benefits. We agree with the definitions. Now, our first point was economy. We had 4 links: consumer spending, small businesses, productivity plus turnover, less government dependence plus taxes, emergency funds plus negotiation power. Now, they refuted this in 3 ways. They first said there's higher prices, the value of the dollar will drop, or in other words, inflation. Now I'll refute this. This is not true. Higher wages means 32 million people, low-wage workers, have more money. They could spend more money on businesses. They spend more money on businesses, increasing their profits, meaning businesses don't need to raise prices and actually can create new jobs and they actually inject over $118 billion into the economy, as my first speaker stated. Every $1 wage increase generates $1.21 in the economy, according to Chicago Fed. Over 20 states have raised their minimum wage in the last decade and no inflation happened. The stats they picked don't show how raising the minimum wage directly leads to higher prices. In fact, it shows that the inflation is skyrocketing and that we need to increase the minimum wage to uphold basic living needs in the status quo. Now, they refuted this also by saying they'll have more money, and they'll have more money, but inflation doesn't occur, so it doesn't really matter. Oh, so they refuted our point also by saying it will not help worker morale because they'll have the same money, but they'll have more money and inflation doesn't occur as stated before, so they have more purchasing power. So this does not stand also. Another thing they stated was 50% minimum wage workers are still in public welfare programs even after minimum wage increase. I'm going to refute this by saying they don't acknowledge the stat my teammate brought up, that 7.6 million people will be removed from poverty according to CBO, and every $1 increase will generate $1.21 into the economy. This completely refutes this point and shows clear statistics how in the past we have helped the economy by increasing the minimum wage, and it will still do it in the future. And the statistic doesn't show the contrast between the past and the future between the minimum wage. It just says 50%. There might have been more people using in welfare programs before the minimum wage increase, and they do not specify. Now, our second contention was public health. We had three links: healthcare, food security, and physical and mental health. They refuted this by saying they'll be burnt out because employers expect more. And also they won't offer the healthcare. As stated before, small businesses will earn more and therefore will be able to increase wages and actually hire even more, which will help them their mental health and their physical health as well. And employers expecting more from the workers is not directly due to the wages, because they won't expect, no, thank you. They won't expect more because, again, their profits are not changing. They're actually even making even more money. So why would they expect more? And this is not directly because of increasing minimum wage. There's no correlation, and they don't have any statistics to back directly that minimum wage is causing this. Now, their first contention was offshoring and automation. Judge, they claim raising the minimum wage causes offshoring and automation, but it's simply it's the opposite. This is a full turn. Higher wages make it more efficient for companies to invest in people here at home. According to the Harvard Business Review, companies that pay higher wages see up to 65% lower turnover, which cuts training costs and increases productivity. Look at Costco. They pay well above federal minimum wage and have some of the lowest turnover and highest productivity in retail. So if anything, raising wages will help us keep jobs in America and reduce the pressure to offshore to other countries. Now, I'll also refute this point by saying federal laws already override these laws, so offshoring won't occur at all. And this has happened in the past when we increased the minimum wage and no offshoring occurred. And for automation is driven by technology and efficiency, not wages. Increasing wages actually slows it down and gives every family a chance to get a good education and survive the automation boom. It gives them a stability. And like, for example, should we stop improving healthcare because AI might take doctor jobs? No. If automation happens, we need stronger wages and protections, not weaker ones. So this does not stand. The second contention was inflation. I already refuted this by saying how they won't increase their prices. The third contention was worse worker conditions. We already refuted this by saying it's not a direct correlation. Now I'll be quickly going over a third contention. USFG increasing the minimum wage helps public health. Our first link is healthcare. If workers are, our third contention is actually the USFG increasing the minimum wage helps equality. Our first link is past president. The fight for $15 movement from 2012 to present has won over $150 billion in raises and for 26 million workers nationwide. It shows public feasibility and need. Seattle's phased $15 minimum wage increase saw a 3% increase in job creation. U.S. minimum wage has been stuck since 2009, and we need to change this. Education. Our second link is education. Some kids are born to families where it's impossible to escape poverty. More wage allows for families to invest in more education through better nutrition, stable housing, and access to learning materials, so better learning outcomes, so they have a higher chance of getting a high-paying job. Our third link is leveling the playing field. Raising the minimum wage reduces the wealth inequality by directly increasing the income for the bottom 50% of earners. According to Congressional Budget Office, 15% increase in minimum wage would raise wages for 17 million workers. Our final link is racial and gender inequality. The University of California, Berkeley found that minimum wage increases narrows the gender income by 30% because these are the bottom 50% of workers. The impact of this is that we're lifting entire communities of poverty. We're allowing people to put food on the table, and we're saving lives, which is the weighing mechanism of this debate. Net benefits and a strong leadership role for the proposition sides debate. Thank you.
My name is Tanisha Goodman, and I'm on the opposition side of this topic, starting going against the notion that the U.S. federal government should increase the minimum wage. I'll start by repeating and counter-repeating my comments before moving on to strengthening my first teammates' points and stating what of my own. My time starts in 3, 2, 1, now. So first of all, our weighing mechanism is net benefits, and so first of all, the first contention was consumer spending. We refuted this by saying how there wouldn't be a guaranteed high prices because for minimum wage workers to spend will raise prices for companies to spend more things. It's costing more money in the system, also leads to inflation. So this was, and we also started evidence of how McDonald's restaurants revealed that a 10% hike in minimum wage resulted in a 2.5 increase in the price of a Big Mac. And they refute this by saying more jobs with consumer spending, and there's no inflation when other states have done it. But we've actually showed evidence as it's happened.
our opponents aren't acknowledging the way businesses work. They want to when we're talking about how inflation will actually happen, since
Yeah, excuse me. I just want to ask, I hear a little bit of like buffering. It's a little static. I don't know if that's just on our side. Yeah,
really?
can you like get closer to the mic a little bit because it's a little hard to understand.
So, as they say, inflation does happen. There has been other examples in other states, such as Oakland, and many other examples in the past. So it does actually happen. Also, they had a contention about small businesses supporting it, and we refuted by saying 74% of small businesses believe minimum wage hikes would hurt their operations. The death of small businesses was also non-chain businesses that were at or below the profit range, keeping the owners above poverty. However, the profit statistics were confusing because they didn't show what small businesses actually are. And refused by saying small businesses can afford and support minimum wage. However, his statute is not specific on what makes a small business. It's unknown who they are really surveying. Our survey is specified on non-chain services. After this, they talked. I'll take it in the end if I have time. They said less dependent on government services, but we talked about how 50% of the fast food workers are still enrolled in one public assistance program, and how the statistics the prop is bringing up doesn't take account to the reactions of businesses such as hikes, layoffs, and more. And this doesn't account for inflation. And they brought up some piece of evidence, but actually they're completely ignoring the fact that over 70% of adult recipients report food stamps, report no employment in the reporting month. Even with higher wages, many low-income workers still qualify for support. A UC Berkeley Labor Center also found that 50% of fast food workers are enrolled in at least one public assistance. These workers aren't going to be lifted out from poverty by the increased wages. The statistic, once again, they're bringing up doesn't account for all of this. Also, they talked about public health care and refuted this by saying a $1 increase in the minimum wage is associated with a 9.2% decrease in the how much the percentage of employers providing health insurance. And they're refuted by saying small businesses will earn more. But propositions claim that consumer spending will boost businesses sounds good, but it's not how it shows up in practice. Increased spending isn't guaranteed, often goes to big corporations, not local shops and restaurants facing the wage hike. Also, we had a contention about automation. They said that actually automation helps people and it's meant to help people and it's driven by technological advancements. But actually, automation isn't helping. It replaces many of the low income people's work, especially at food services, retail, and manufacturing. A McKinsey report estimates that 45 million US workers could be displaced by automation by 2030, with low wage workers at most at risk. This showing that how our point still stands. Also, we have a contention on worse working conditions, which they didn't refute. And also, we had a contention about quality, and they also didn't refute this. They talked about wage compression and stuff like that. But actually, we talked about equality, but actually this can lead to wage compression, which is there's a little difference between the pay between low experience and high experience jobs. This is bad because it can lower employee morale and have them perceived as unfair, which often leads them to quit. And this is unfair. Would you want this to happen? I'll move on to my contention. My contention is it hurts most states. My reasoning is states already have a state minimum wage that works for these states. What might be good for states such as New York and California, which have the highest economy, may not be the same for the other 48 states or vice versa. Having an increased minimum wage might make state minimum wages illegal, even though these states' minimum wages are appropriate for the workforce of businesses. Plus, increasing the minimum wage too much for lower economic states can be bad for businesses. This isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. My evidence is, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the cost of living in Mississippi is 30% lower than California. As of 2024, 30 states have in their own minimum wage different from the federal minimum wage. So my impact is this hurts many other states, which can lead to a lower quality of life for people in these states, lower quality of life in the long run, and it hurts most people. Think this all connects back to our weighing mechanism net benefits. Thank you for listening to my speech. I strongly urge you to vote for the opposition side.
All right, guys, I'm gonna go over a quick off-time roadmap and then start my case. So My name is Aisha Nourish. I'm the third speaker on the opposition side, arguing against the notion that the USFG should increase the minimum wage to $15. Here's a quick rundown of my speech. I'm first going to go over the main refutations of this debate and then move on to wings. So my time starts in 3, 2, 1 now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go over is that their point on consumer spending. We like to say that again, price hikes will definitely happen, and the opponents are not acknowledging the way the businesses work, which is the main point of this debate. We're showing that they want to cut costs, and even with the current minimum wage, are also employing taxes such as outsourcing, automation, and price hikes. Increasing the minimum wage just incentivizes them to do more. And news reported that after Oakland raises the minimum wage to 36%, necessities rose by 20%, showing that again there's more inflation as well. Also, a Purdue study shows that raising fast food wages to $15 an hour, the exact amount proposed by the proposition, could lead to up to 25% price hikes. Again, showing that inflation will definitely happen, which goes against consumer spending. Also, low-income workers can get hit by even the smallest increase. Low-income families spend most of their money, all of their income on essentials. Even small price increases in food, rent, and transport reduce real power by fast. Also, they say, I'd like to say that their main point on to refute their point on employee morale and productivity, along with their point on refute to our point on bad working conditions, that even with the increased minimum wage, they'll still be earning minimum wage, and so there's no major morale shift, and people employers might actually expect more of these increased minimum wage workers, because which will lead to overwork, burnout, and even worse work conditions, going against their point on public health. I'd also like to say that to them, when we get less dependent on government services, we're showing that they're completely ignoring the fact that over 70% of adult recipients of food stamps report no employment in the reporting month, and even with higher wages, many low-income workers still qualify for support. So either way, it's actually not hurting anyone. All right. Now, I'd also like to say that again, burnout is an extremely important factor in this debate, and it actually shows that all of their points on public health is completely false, because there's more of these employers will expect more for this increased minimum wage, which leads to overwork. Now let's move on to wage. So I'd like to go over our points. Our first point was job loss, because many businesses, even if they could afford it, would rather cut costs rather than paying workers more. With outsourcing, laying off employees, and switching to automation could lead to drastic decreases in jobs and less opportunity, which is bad for the economy. Not showing net benefits at all, which is the weighing mechanism of this debate. Showing that in their world, we're not showing net benefits at all, showing that we're also increasing poverty as well, since this is decreasing the lower quality of life and helping and not letting lower wage workers earn more. We're also our second point was there's inflation and bad for the economy, and this inflation can lead to higher prices, meaning it's harder to pay for necessities, leading to more poverty and a lower quality of life. Again, showing it's going completely against the weighing mechanism, net benefits. Our third point was that there would be working conditions / burnout, because to increase the cost effectiveness of jobs, many businesses would increase the workload so that more work is done in less hours, meaning the business has to pay less to employees for more work. And this so our impact again is that lower working conditions such as burnout and lower healthcare will lead to less visits to the doctor, and again leads to a lower quality of life and lower health, again proving to their point that there's going against their point about public health. Okay, our last point is that they hurt most states, because what might be good for states such as New York and California, the highest economic states, may not be the same for these other 48 states, or vice versa. Also, improving two state economy is not worth neglecting and ruining the other 48 states. And since it hurts many other states, it leads to a lower quality of life for people in those states, leading to a lower quality of life in the long run, and it hurts most people. So that's why I'd like to show that our side has a better quality of life for all states, has a higher mental health, has less poverty, higher economy, and overall just shows net benefits due to our points, proving that their side is not showing net benefits. the greater amount of good for the greater amount of people, which is our weighing mechanism. I'd also like to go over impact analysis. So our impacts have a higher probability because in states with the federal minimum wage, these great impacts are already happening, proving this is possible. As we see, California and Washington have much higher economy, showing that these great impacts can still happen. Also, there's a higher magnitude because it's impacting 95.8% of Americans, which is all of the working Americans in the entirety of the United States. And this is happening ASAP, as people will begin to earn money as soon as it's in effect, increasing everything and helping the economy. Thank you for listening to my speech, and I strongly recommend you to vote for the opposition ballot.
All right, Judge, before I start, I want to offer a quick off-time roadmap. Hello, judges. My name is Jay Freddy, representing Fremont Debate Academy Horner on the property size debate, moving towards the notion that the United States federal government should increase the minimum wage. Quick roadmap for my speech. So first, we'll start off with the food summary and go over both the proposition and the opposition's points and overall collapse. Then move on to PMT analysis if time allows. Time starts in 3, 2, 1. So the weighing mechanism still net benefits, most amount good for the most amount of people. Definitions, they agree definitions all flow through, still the same. So our first attention about economy, first thing was consumer spending with small businesses. Talk about small businesses are going to lose money. They're not going to make as much money. They talk about how they can be negatively impacted. But Judge, as we talked about, there's going to be more money flow in the economy. People have more money, so they're going to spend more money. So overall, increase the profit margins of these small businesses. Small businesses are being positively affected. So we talked about our second link about productivity plus turnover. They talked about how there's no chance of productivity. Doesn't make any sense. Anything like that. But Judge, as you've seen through all these examples, evidence you brought up, the productivity is overall increasing. And it's just common sense, Judge. When you're paid more, you're going to be more productive because you're being compensated more for what you do, and it should matter more. People should be fairly compensated for what they do, and there's way less of a turnover margin as what we brought up in our evidence. Our third link was less government dependence plus taxes. They refuted us talking about how there's still like 70% of these people who are reporting that they have no employment or getting government assistance. That literally makes absolutely no sense, because if they have no employment and they're getting government assistance, that's literally exactly how it works. They don't have a job, they're getting government they're getting government subsidized, and that's exactly how it works. So we're talking about people with jobs and people under this minimum wage. So any people outside this minimum wage gap, it doesn't matter in this debate. So our fourth link is emergency funds plus negotiation power. That link completely still flows through. Negotiation never refute that point. They never refute that link. So that first contention completely flows through. It still stands. Our second contention is public health. We had links about healthcare, food security, physical plus mental health. They refuse to talk about this. They'll be burned out because employers expect more, so they won't offer healthcare. And then we free them to talk about small businesses earn more due to money flowing in the economy. So we're going to counter for this now. So when people make more, they get more money for healthcare. It's not backed by evidence. It's overall just common sense. It's a fact. It ignores how higher wages actually reduce burnout by improving job satisfaction, morale, and retention. Overall, people have more money. They have more money for public health and other things that and other effects that they have. So that connection still falls through. It still stands. But the connection about equality, we had links about past, present, education, leveling playing field. Fourth thing was racial and gender equality. Never refute this point at all. So this point still completely flows through. Move on to the opposition's opposition's contentions. So the opposition's contention. So the first contention was offshoring plus automation, right? So it's actually the opposite. Studies from the Harvard Business Review and the Center of American Progress show that higher wages reduce turnover and boost productivity and keep jobs in the United States, making workers more valuable. So that contention does not stand. Our second contention was inflation. Their second contention was inflation. If we talk about higher wages, means 32 million low wage workers have more money. They spend more money in businesses, and increasing their profit means businesses don't actually need to raise and can actually create new jobs and inject over $108 billion into the economy. They directly increase business profit margin, meaning businesses don't need to raise prices. So that connection does not stand. That connection does not stand at all. Completely refuted. Then the third contention about worse working conditions, we're gonna freely talk about. It's not backed by it's overall a fact too, because the hard wages actually reduce burnout by improving job satisfaction and morale and retention. So that contention is not stand. Okay, now moving on to their fourth contention about how it hurts states. Okay, Judge, if they're talking about different economies, how it hurts states, Judge, why is this still happening where 44 million people are still food are still food insecure. There's millions of people in poverty. Why is that still happening? If there's a situation right now in the status quo where they're talking about how it's harmful in these states, are still putting minimum wages by states, why is this food insecurity, why is the poverty still happening? When we have these issues that are substantive to different states and it's overall affecting the whole country, the federal government should step in. States already defer in cost of living, but that's exactly why federal government baseline is needed. Without it, workers, low cost states get locked into poverty because businesses take advantage of their weak labor and protections. A federal wage guarantees basic fairness, but doesn't prevent states from going higher. It only prevents exploitation at the bottom. And Judge, I'm going to collapse right now. So all the points rely on two arguments: inflation and worse working conditions. Inflation doesn't occur. We have conflicting evidence. You need to see the past present to see which evidence has higher probability. In the past, when we increased the minimum wage, we created jobs and millions of new jobs of the millions of the dollar in the economy as happened in the past. We've added to our economy. Everything has been positive and have been positive. On the point that employees are getting burnout is speculative and don't have any evidence to prove it. They also don't have any direct correlation. So you should, when deciding who wins this debate, you should rely on past presidents, Judge. Now I'm going to move on to PMT now. So probability is helping in the past and will be helpful in the status. It will be completely helpful in the status quo. And the magnitude is 17 million workers, or C raises 7.6 million people lifted out of poverty to the CBO, $118 billion economic boost, $31 billion saved in federal aid. The time frame, short term, increasing spending, job retention, morale in year one, and generational benefits, equity, economic stability, and social mobility. And Judge Ty's entire PMT analysis all back to the way mechanism net benefits the most amount of good for the most amount of people. And I urge you to vote for the province size debate. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That was a really, really great debate. Really appreciate everyone's time and all the effort you have put in. And as the judges take a few minutes to just make the decision and share it. Just wanted to share everyone that's watching on the YouTube live stream. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully everyone learned